Good afternoon. Welcome to the Tuesday, June 11, 2019 regular session of the EBMUD Board of Directors. Madam Secretary, can you call the roll, please?
Directors Coleman.
Present.
Katz.
Present.
Lenny.
Here.
McIntosh. Here. Mellon.
Present.
Patterson.
Present.
President Young.
I'm here. Also, for reference, the Planning Committee met earlier today, and that will be reported under item 17. Time for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we've got a lot on the agenda today, but before we move into our action agenda, we have one presentation to Acterra.
Yes, we also have an associated video. So let me provide a little background. The district has received the Acterra Environmental Project Award. Acterra is a local nonprofit climate action organization that has served Silicon Valley and the Bay Area since 1970. On May 22nd, Acterra acknowledged the district's resource recovery program, providing us with an environmental project award. This award recognizes innovative programs and outstanding achievements that contribute towards a sustainable Bay Area. The district's resource recovery program utilizes excess digester capacity to convert commercial and industrial food processing wastes into biogas and renewable energy. As a result, the district's wastewater treatment plant was the first in North America to become a net energy producer and export significant amounts of renewable energy to the grid. The resource recovery program is a model for other agencies to transform waste products into valuable resources. It is a significant trend that recovers resources, reduces greenhouse gas emissions, and generates additional revenue to offset rising wastewater costs. And our Director of Wastewater will run the video that was shown at the award event.
EBMUD is a joint water and wastewater agency that serves eastern San Francisco Bay Area. At our wastewater treatment plant, we receive an average flow of about 50 million gallons a day of wastewater. The R2 program, the resource recovery program, was born almost 20 years ago. We've allowed trucks to haul commercial and industrial waste to our wastewater treatment plant for treatment.
So we are currently at the fog receiving station. The truck is hooked up and they are provided with a code, then the valve will open and then they are allowed to offload into our fog tanks.
This resource recovery program is very valuable, and we're one of the few treatment plants in Northern California that has the infrastructure and the capability to handle these high-strength organics.
The R2 program sees between 100 to 150 tanker trucks per day delivering waste to the plant. And each of those tanker trucks, on average, can hold about 5,000 gallons of liquid.
They have to truck these waste because some of the local treatment facilities don't have the infrastructure to handle large organic demand. They have very strict limits for discharge. Their only resources to be able to truck it to our plant. We recover the energy off of it.
This is where we receive some of our high-strength waste as well as our famous food waste loads.
We take high-strength organics from food and beverage industries, from dairy processing facilities in the Central Valley, processing of chicken blood, and wineries and breweries in Northern California.
So below me are two grinders, so it makes it easier to continue to pump contents to our blend tanks and the digestion process.
In 2012, we became the first wastewater treatment plant in North America to become a net energy producer, meaning that we produce more power than we need to operate the wastewater treatment plant. And since that time, we've been in exceedance of 100% every year, and we're now between 130 to 140% of our plant demand.
So these right next to me are the digesters. This is where all the magic happens. Our blend tanks feed all of those high-strength wastes and all the other types of waste into these digesters where it forms the methane gas and goes into the power generation station.
We sell the surplus electricity to our neighbor, the Port of Oakland, and we earn additional revenue from these power sales, which can then be used to keep our wastewater treatment rates low to our ratepayers.
Above me is what we call our gas header, where it collects biogas from each of the nearly 2 million gallon digesters, and then it's fed to our cogen engines. And all four are capable of generating up over 11 megawatts of energy.
Many other treatment plants around the country have adopted our model, and it's great to see them generating more renewable electricity, which is just great for the environment in general.
All right, so Vice President Lenny, present the award. So many district employees work together to develop and continually operate the Resource Recovery Program, and I'd like to acknowledge a few of those that contributed. And if you would come forward, and then we'll have a photo. Ike Bell, Plant Maintenance Superintendent. Brian Dunstan, Associate Civil Engineer. John Hake, Senior Civil Engineer. Iris Khan, Chemist 2. Kai Leai, Senior Wastewater Control Inspector. Melissa Lash, Research Microbiologist. Jason Lee, Wastewater Operator. Colin Moy, Senior Environmental Health and Safety Specialist. And James Wang, Associate Civil Engineer. Congratulations.
I just want to say on behalf of the Board of Directors, we're very proud of all the work that you guys have done. Really innovative work that you've done there at the wastewater treatment plant. I think is an example to a lot of other wastewater treatment plants and what they're trying to do. And I understand a couple of you maybe have movie agents now for. So anyway, congratulations on all that.
Okay, there are no announcements from closed session, so we'll move on to public comment. I have 3 cards for the part of public comment that is not associated with items on the agenda, and I have a number of cards for item 11. I think it's item 11 on the agenda, the budget rates and charges public hearing. So if there are any other folks for public comment, if you can fill out a blue speaker card and bring it forward now, that would be great. The first speaker I have is Ethan McGonis. And please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. Nathan McGonis, 317 Leicester Avenue. You have cut our water off. It's 2.5 months now. It's very, very frustrating. I've been in front of you twice now in the past. If you wonder why I keep coming here, there's 2 main reasons. One is very frustrating. We're desperate. We don't have water. Can you believe all you people here around here in this beautiful palace that you have with no water? We're without water. You did that out of spite because we dared raise an issue that would be useful to you, much like all these people here today, that they're here to express themselves against your rates, exorbitant rates. We paid millions of dollars to you, years over years. That's one of the reasons that I'm here today. We're desperate. We need our water back. You are justified and took it out. Second, I didn't get an opportunity last time and the time before to counter the misinformation that was fed onto you, and you kind of spent me off. You know, everybody's okay, just go to the staff. It doesn't work like this. You're in charge of this organization. You got to do something to keep it going. It's going haywire. You have a big, sick, police state outside the doors here. I'm sorry, I don't want to be critical. I'm giving you advice. Please take it in stride. I'm only here in our case, but take it and use it. If you fend me and them off, you're not serving anybody. Hopefully, something's going to happen. I have questions, if I may, please. We found out in this last report from your staff that we violated, quote, violated Regulation 2. Nowhere in Regulation 2 it says that you guys need to shut the water off, take the water off from people. We pay you for 100 years. Every month we have invested right in whatever we have. We need to keep it until you determine that we need a big pipe, bigger meter, whatever it is. Okay, fine, we gave you close to $1 million. Fine, you do it. Why do we have to be without water in the midnight? I tell you why. Because your staff, they want to vindicate us. They want to chase us like a mouse. A cat chasing a mouse to keep us around. Why? Because we raised some issue. You have some legal weakness in your system. Your legal wizards, they tell you something. Don't listen to them. Try to get to the bottom of this. We're just here messengers. Fix your system. We need to get our water back in the interim. Why do we have to be without water? What did we do wrong? We're entitled to whatever we had before. Until you change it to something else, we need to have it. Every department you have, they send me from one department to the other. Each one of them have their own kingdom, in their own fiefdom. I have to plead and lobby with each one of them. And each one of them, they tell me, but listen, you need to go to the other one and plead with them. And by the way, we want to make sure that you're not going to get ahead. We're going to make sure that you stay behind, last on line. Why do we have to be last on line? We didn't do anything wrong. You took our water. 1 second.
You're out of time, sir.
Thank you.
As folks know, we are not permitted to respond to comments made. Next up, Mark Foley.
President Young, members of the board, General Manager Coe, General Counsel Spencer, good afternoon. My name is Mark Foley. I'm the president of ASFE Local 2019, and I want to say thank you. After 25 years in Local 2019 leadership, the last 14 as president, today is my last board meeting. When I was elected to the BART Board of Directors, I knew that I would need to step down in my role in ASFE. But I'm confident that Joey Smith, our newest president, will do a great job. Congratulations to Joey. It has been an honor and a privilege to represent my coworkers and to try to improve life at East Bay Mud. Our interactions, our challenges, solutions have all made me a better employee and a better union leader, more than I would ever know. I thought I got involved with the union to help folks, other folks. What I found out was I was really helping myself and my family along the way. Everything I've learned has prepared me for the years of negotiating I would have to do with my daughter's school district to get her the special services she needed as an autistic child. Last Friday, my daughter Maya graduated with high honors from high school. She starts college on Monday for summer school.
Us.
Thank you for helping me be a better father and husband, as well as an employee. I wish you well. Take care.
Okay, and congratulations, Mark. Best of luck. Joey Smith.
Good afternoon, President, Board, staff. I didn't know he was going to do that, but everything he said is right on point, and I can't think of anyone in our local who would argue against it. But that's not why I'm here. Today, I got a chance to read a memo that had a couple of items in it that weren't completely accurate, and we all know that accuracy in our memos makes a world of difference. It stuck out to me because, as I've spoken with you all before, in reference to the SEP, our former special employment program, I was part of it, and I noticed some things that weren't completely accurate. Sorry, Sophia, I didn't get a chance to see it before I could talk to you. But that being said, I'd like to ask that you take into consideration when you have people who are part of programs that the district has had. If we're still here, reach out to us. We'll definitely give you information that we have. I'm very welcome, very open to you coming and speaking with me in the different programs that I have participated in. Special employment program, the women in trades. We're working together, part of the teamwork as our values here. And I only want the district to look good when we are going forward with things. That being said, please keep that in mind, that I'm sure that Director Patterson and Director McIntosh, when you read it through, you may catch a few of the things that I caught because you were here when I was here. And let's talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like I have one other card for public comment that looks like it may not be associated with item 11, or it might be. Diane Kopp. You want to speak to the rates, or is it something else?
It's the rates.
Okay, that's item 11. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, no other folks for public comment. We'll move on to the consent calendar. I would like to pull item 10. Is there any other items that folks would like to pull?
I'll move items 1 through 9.
Second.
Okay. Items 1 through 9 have been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I guess it's consent. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. The item passes unanimously. For item 10, I wanted to pull this because I believe that it's regarding adopting a climate action policy for the district to both affirm the work that we've been doing, as well as recommit ourselves to a position of leadership on this issue. And I believe we are the first water district in the country to adopt a consider adoption of a climate action policy. So I know there are a lot of you that want to speak, but on the rates issue, but I didn't want to let this pass without a brief presentation on it for the benefit of those in the room and others, and then we'll take our vote.
And so at your request, we have Mike Ambrose, Department Manager in O&M, who will provide a brief presentation.
Okay. Good afternoon, President Young, members of the board. I'm pleased to present some history on what we've done as far as responding to climate change and a little bit of background for the vote on the climate action policy. So there's been a number of reports out there on the science of climate change, both internationally with the International Panel on Climate Change, both the National Climate Assessment and California's own assessment. And the science is pretty clear that we're on track to warm at about 1.5 degrees C in the next decade. And if we don't take some action quickly, it's going to get even worse, more severe. And what are those challenges, really? We're seeing already a lot of the impacts: severe droughts, storms, changes in runoff timing, flood risk, sea level rise, all issues that relate to operations or impact operations for a water and wastewater utility. But it also has impacts to our economy. And I was just reading an article yesterday that said, it was in Wired magazine, that the U.S. sustained $91 billion in damages in 2018 from climate-related disasters, including tropical cyclones, severe storms, floods, droughts, and wildfires. So it's a significant impact on the economy as well as our operations. And it's going to take a number of changes from not only us, but the rest of the nation and the world. So as you mentioned, this is not the first action that the district has taken on climate change. We have a climate change mitigation and response plan that looks at not only adapting to climate change, but mitigating our own emissions. We have an energy management strategy to ensure that we have a secure supply, a diverse supply of energy for our operations. You've adopted sustainability policies, energy policies, which include greenhouse gas reduction goals, which are very aggressive, but we're going to consider a climate action policy today. So I thought it'd be good to talk about sort of a timeline of some of our major actions. You saw in the film that we have a power generating station at the main wastewater plant. We put that in place in 1985, really as a way to convert a waste that we had, biogas. Instead of flaring it, we can use that to generate electricity. We're now a net seller of renewable energy from that system. Oops. In 2003, we adopted a renewable energy policy to promote cost-effective use of primarily photovoltaics, but we're looking at other renewable energy sources. In 2005, we created our first greenhouse gas inventory, which looked at our indirect and direct emissions, which is the first step towards reducing our emissions overall. In 2006, we constructed our first photovoltaic system, which was at the Sobrani Water Treatment Plant, which is a 430 kilowatt system installed on the roof of our Clearwell. In 2008, we adopted a sustainability policy, which was formerly an environmental responsibility policy. We broadened that to include the triple bottom line, so we considered the environment as well as economic and social impacts on our decisions and our operations. 2008 was a pretty busy year. We added climate change to our strategic plan, and we created our first version, our first revision to the first initially generated our climate change monitoring and response plan. Then in 2012, the board adopted our update to the water supply management plan, which included climate change, evaluating the impacts of climate change on our water supply. In 2013, we converted our renewable energy policy into an energy policy. So we looked at all forms of energy, and we adopted aggressive goals for greenhouse gas reductions as part of that policy. In 2015, we started using renewable diesel, which is it's chemically identical to petroleum diesel, but it's created from plant-based products, and so it's completely biogenic. It helps us offset our direct emissions from a lot of our heavy-duty equipment. And we are finishing up one of our latest PV systems, our photovoltaic systems up at the Comanche Dam. And once we're done there, we will have 2 megawatts of power online, producing clean energy for the system. And now in 2019, we're considering a climate action policy. And so as President Young mentioned, we're not aware of another water utility that has a specific climate action policy. And as you mentioned as well, it just affirms our actions related to climate change, that we're going to adapt to the impacts that we know that are coming and do our part to mitigate emissions. We're committing to working on legislation to mitigate climate change, supporting strong state and federal action, collaborating with the industry and other utilities out there, and take a leadership role in addressing climate change. So we're tied into a number of groups that are addressing climate change. The Bay Area Climate Action Network is one of several regional networks that are local area governments working on adapting to climate change, so stormwater runoff, sea level rise, etc. So we're a member of the Bay Area version of that, BayCan. We're considered a founder of the Water Energy Nexus for the Climate Registry. So we've been working with the Climate Registry for a number of years. This is a nonprofit that creates protocols for assembling inventories of greenhouse gas emissions. So you have a protocol, everyone is reporting on the same rules, per se. And now they're creating this Water Energy Nexus protocol, which is a way of assigning greenhouse gases to utilities and people or agencies that have a large water footprint, like a beverage industry, assigning greenhouse gases to their operations. We've signed on to We Are Still In, so it's a group of individuals and agencies, counties, cities, local governments that support the Paris Agreement. As I mentioned, we're investing in clean energy projects and including climate change in our planning activities, and we're participating with the EPA, UC Davis, Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory, and research projects for addressing climate change in the long term. So I want to go through that pretty quickly so that I can answer any questions and can consider the policy going forward.
Any questions from board
Or
members?
comments?
Or comments? Andy?
Thank you for the presentation. This policy has been through the Sustainability Committee and the Finance and Administration Committee, and both were unanimously recommended. I made comments at those committees that I strongly support the policy because of the imperative of addressing climate change. But I think that the district can implement this policy by considering what we can do to be a leader in clean vehicle procurement. So we can be a leader in clean vehicle procurement by being a part of an early buyers club for electric vehicles, not just in the passenger light duty sector, but also in catalyzing change in the medium duty and heavy duty sector, which I think is still largely petroleum based. And if we are early buyers in that effort, then we can help catalyze change for utilities and cities across the country. I also think that it's important that we revisit the greenhouse gas goal that was on one of your slides in the forthcoming energy policy, so that we can put this policy into action.
Okay, great, thank you.
I just want to appreciate, I came up with the idea for this following attendance at the Global Climate Summit last September to say, hey, we're doing all these things, but we're not on any of these lists. And it's not just to be on a list. I mean, I think that, East Bay MUD is in a particular position to play a leadership role nationally because of the unique attributes of our system. From everything from, dealing with our variable snowpack and what that's going to mean to, the changes that are going to happen down in the bay with sea level rise and everything that happens in between. So I'm very pleased to move the item, and Director Patterson has seconded. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That was a unanimous vote. Okay, thank you.
Madam President,
Yes.
I wanted to congratulate you on moving this to the fore. It keeps East Bay MUD in its esteemed leadership position and lets us be out on the front end of taking things that are most essential and necessary for the people to the top. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are now on agenda item 11, which is, a public hearing to consider water system and wastewater system proposed changes to the schedule of rates and charges. The public hearing is now open. Please note that a blue speaker card is not a valid protest. If you want to lodge a protest, you may do so with staff who are located in the rear of the room. Can you stand, actually? So they're all the way at the very back. Please do so with staff located in the rear of the room as soon as possible to ensure an efficient protest and make sure that your protest is counted. We will announce the number of protests before we close the hearing, so it's important that you have a protest that you should file it. We'll now have a presentation from our finance director, Sophia Skoda. And then we'll take public comments following that.
Okay, good afternoon, Board of Directors and members of the public. We're here to present the fiscal years 20 and 21 rates and charges and the biennial budget, and this is the public hearing. So we thought we would start because we don't often have as many members of the public in the room when we have presentations with a brief sort of view at where our water comes from. So the source of our water starts with snowmelt and rain in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and we store that water in our reservoir that we as the public all own together, Party Reservoir. And we bring that water into the East Bay through our McCullamy aqueducts that bring the water 90 miles from the Sierras into the East Bay. We serve 1.4 million customers with that water through our raw water system, which comprises 5 local reservoirs, 6 water treatment plants, over 4,000 miles of pipeline in our distribution system, including 122 pressure zones and 164 water storage tanks. We also serve 685,000 of those customers with wastewater service. What you'll see in the green, the unshaded portion plus the shaded portion represents the 1.4 million people that we serve in the geographic area that spans. And the shaded area that hugs the bay represents the wastewater customers that we serve. And the reason we don't serve wastewater service east of the hills is because it wouldn't make economic sense to pump that wastewater over those hills. On the wastewater side of our house, we treat 50 million gallons per day, as was stated in the presentation earlier about our resource recovery program. And we also operate and maintain 29 miles of sewer interceptors and 3 wet weather facilities. Our operations span 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, around the clock. And these are just some photos of the staff that do this work every day. We have folks in our operations center on the lower left-hand side. We have someone working on a meter box to the right of that. And to the far right is someone that's working on a weekend on an emergency break. And in the far left top corner, another kind of a break that was in the middle of a rainstorm. On the far right, we have somebody taking samples. Our water samplers make sure that the water that we deliver continues to be high quality and meets all federal and state standards. So for fiscal years 20 and 21, this is the public hearing on our rates and charges. And there are several agenda items that this comprises. So item 11 is conducting a public hearing to consider the water system and wastewater system proposed changes to a schedule of rates and charges. Item 12.1 will be adoption of the rates and charges that are subject to Proposition 218, which is now Article 13 C and D of the California Constitution. Item 12.2 will be to adopt rates and charges, fees, and regulations that are not subject to Proposition 218, including capacity fees. Item 13 will be to adopt the proposed fiscal years 20 and 21 budget, and item 14 would be to adopt the accompanying position resolution for that budget. With regards to our budget and rates calendar, first budget workshop was held in January 22nd, following an infrastructure workshop that was held in November of the prior year. Budget workshop 2 was held on March the 26th, and that covered the biennial budget for 20 and 21 in addition to the Proposition 218 rates and charges. We also mailed the Proposition 218 notice to our customers by April 26th, and the general manager's report on rates and charges was filed on May the 14th. We held a public budget information session on June 4th here at the administration building of the district, and are currently conducting our public hearing on rates and charges, and the board will consider the proposed FY20 and 21 rates, charges, budget, and position resolution. If passed, the FY20 rates and charges would become effective on July 1, 2019 of this year. So now we enter item 12.1, which is the Proposition 218 rates and charges. The water and wastewater system FY20 and 21 rates and charges are shown on this chart. And what you'll see is the proposed rate for FY20 is 6.5%, and the following year is 6.25%. These proposed rates for the water side are slightly lower than what we had projected 2 years ago when we completed a 5-year look ahead. So we had projected 7%, 7%, followed by 5%. We're pleased to be able to come back with just under that at 6.5 and 6.25%, still followed by 5% at this time. On the wastewater side, the average homeowner will see an increase of about 3% to the wastewater bill following a cost of service study that was conducted during this past year that resulted in a reallocation of costs to our customers based on their usage characteristics. I wanted to take a moment to cover our rate increase history. The district has had a series of significant rate increases driven by water sales level and our increased investments in infrastructure. The 30% drop in water sales started in 2008 when the district saw drops in water sales associated with the national recession and a drought. We tightened belts and had a hiring freeze and put off work that was immediately urgent that resulted in a backlog of deferred maintenance. In 2014, the district started its recovery and began working on addressing our deferred maintenance and rehabilitating our core systems. Since 2007, while the effective rate increase has been 7.4% annually, the actual impact to the average single-family residential customer has been 4.8%, so less than that as a result of conservation. A question that our customers often ask is, where does each one of my rate dollars go? So on the water side, we can see here a water glass that shows each layer as a portion of our costs. 55 cents of that dollar represents infrastructure improvements and supplemental water supply. 29 cents represents water service. 7 cents administration. 4 cents customer service. 3 cents for our natural resources management, managing our vast lands. And 2 cents for regulatory compliance, making up that $1 total. On the wastewater side of our house, 46 cents of that dollar represents infrastructure improvements, 33 cents represents operations, engineering, water quality, laboratory work, and our weather facilities. 12 cents represents our pollution prevention activities, 7 cents administration, and 2 cents customer service. Our rates are based on cost of service, and our operating and capital expenditures are planned to ensure that we can provide what our customers expect, which is reliable 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week service. The revenue that we are given by our customers from the water and wastewater rates fund those expenditures, and we are a not-for-profit public agency, and our rates can only cover the costs of providing those services. Our rates are required to follow the requirements of Proposition 218, which governs all property-related charges, including water and wastewater rates. It also imposes a number of procedural and substantive requirements for rate adoption, including the notice that all of our customers have received. Revenues from those rates may not exceed the cost of providing water and wastewater service. So again, all of our rates are based on the cost of service, and expenses are allocated to customers based on their use and their use characteristics, consistent with Proposition 218 requirements and industry standards. I'd also like to point out that a recent review concluded in the last few months found our rates to be in full compliance with the law. So what's the impact to the average single-family resident? So if we look at the average customer who's using 800 cubic feet per month on the water side and 600 cubic feet on the wastewater side, and the difference there represents that A customer doesn't have all of their water actually come down the drain for wastewater treatment. As you might imagine, some of that water is for outdoor use, and we don't want to charge you for that water. So for an 8 CCF customer, the FY19 bill is $56.12 at present. At the end of the 2 years of proposed rate increases, that bill would be $63.47. On the wastewater side, the bill is $21.95, which includes the wet weather charge that we collect on the property tax bill, not on the water bill. And so a homeowner would, at the end of this 2-year period, be paying $23.02 per month for wastewater treatment services. We do not provide collection services. Those are provided by the cities of Oakland, for example, City of Berkeley, City of Emeryville, etc. But those charges are on our bill. We do that as a courtesy. So the monthly family single residential customer impact varies based on use. And so this graphic represents use from the 25th percentile through the 95th percentile. So 4 CCF of use all the way to 24 CCF of use. So the average user that we had discussed was an 8 CCF using about 200 gallons per day. 50% of our customers, actually the 50th percentile, use less than that at only 6 HCF. And so those customers, 50% of our customers will be paying at the end of these 2 years under $60, so under $2 per day. The proposed bill would be $53.37. The average bill is shown on the bottom line. So with respect to water, there are other customers other than residential, although the large portion of our customers are residential. Multifamily residential buildings and commercial and industrial buildings don't pay a tiered rate as single-family residential customers do. They pay a commodity charge. And for average customers in these characteristics, we have the proposed bill impacts shown. So with regards to the wastewater single-family residential impacts, we show here 2. One, the average single-family residential use at 6, and then the maximum at 9 CCF. And what you'll see is that maximum is at $25.55 as of FY19 and would increase up to just under $27 at the end of the 2-year period. Why is there a maximum for a single-family residential customer, you might ask? And the reason is at some point there's only so much water that someone's actually using indoors for flushing toilets, or washing dishes and doing laundry, and that's reflected in the rest of that would actually be water that again is being used for outdoor watering, and we don't want to treat charge our customers for that water. On the non-residential side, this chart shows the impact for restaurants, hotels, hospitals, and retail offices, subject to a recent cost of service study. On the wet weather facilities charge, we have 3 categories: small lot of under 5,000 square feet, a medium lot from 5 to 10,000 square feet, and a large lot for more than 10,000 square feet. And the bulk of our customers fall in the small lot category. So the proposed increases on this side, $103.74 up to $115.70. And so while the first year change looks like it's 7% included with the other charges, there's less than a 3% change to the average single-family residential customer. So when we look at our bill in comparison to other water agencies in the area, we know that for many years East Bay MUD was in the top third of this chart. But the board set a strategic plan goal to bring this down to the middle. And we were at the middle for many years, and we are now actually moving below the middle of the agencies that we have compared ourselves to historically. On the wastewater side of the house, you'll see a blue line, and then you'll see a green longer line. The reason why it's harder to compare our wastewater bill is because we only provide wastewater treatment services. So the green bar to the right of our blue bar represents the average of the collection system charges from communities like Piedmont, Berkeley, Oakland, Emeryville, etc. So we only control the blue portion of the bar. We did want to note during this time when affordability is a very serious concern, particularly in the Bay Area, that we have a customer assistance program that can assist low-income residential customers by reducing their bi-monthly water service charge bill, charged by up to 50%, and reducing their home water use charges by up to 50% as well, up to a maximum use per person per month. There's also a 35% reduction in the wastewater service charge for eligible customers. There's more information that's available on eastbaymud.com/CAP, Customer Assistance Program. And we offer payment plans, extensions, ways to save money and water. And we would urge anyone that knows someone that could be eligible for this program to reach out. We have done a lot during the last 2 years to try to reach out and have more customers join the program, and we have seen more customers joining. So now we're on to item 12.2 of the agenda, which are the non-processing rates and charges. So the proposed water and wastewater capacity fee increases include no dollar change to the water system capacity charge. We will be conducting a new water system capacity charge study following the completion of the demand study that's underway. We do, however, have updated language to clarify when the standard FCC rate tables are applicable. On the wastewater side of the house, we also, as we completed the cost of service study on the rate side, on the capacity fee side, we completed an updated capacity fee study. And there is a proposed increase of 5.4% from $2,610 for the average single-family residential customer. And that is basically a new home that's joining into our service area. So if someone builds a new home on a lot, this is the charge that they would pay. So they would now pay $2,750. And the idea is that this fee helps to recoup all of the investments made by all of our ratepayers. So when a new home builder builds a home, you are being compensated for the investment that you made in the system by the charges that we charge to those developers or builders. There's also a new assessment process for non-residential wastewater capacity fees that will be easier for staff to process and more transparent for our customers, that now uses 3 categories of non-residential strength and flow based on meter size up to 1.5 inches. Other proposed updates to rates and fees include making sure that we are recovering reasonable costs based on our actual hourly rates, for example, of our employees and our actual cost of materials. And so these updates include changes to our water account establishment fee in Schedule B, special services in Schedule C, and public records and real estate property use application fees, including a new fee that allows us to recoup costs associated with long-term encroachment permits. Item 13 on the agenda covers the FY20 and 21 biennial operating and capital budget. The capital budget and operating budget priorities are driven by our strategic plan, which are to continue our investments in and maintenance of our aging infrastructure and to plan for long-term financial stability. Over the last several years, the board has supported a strong surge in investments in infrastructure. We have a number of challenges. We have aging infrastructure. I had the opportunity to see a crew in action several weeks ago in Oakland. When the crew was working, I said, you know, what material is this pipe and when was it put in place? So we pulled up on one of our investments, which has been in an electronic system to be able to look at pipes. And he said, well, it says CI 0694, so it's cast iron, it's a 6-inch pipe. And he said, and that's not 1994, it's an 1894 line. So that's a line that's been in service for nearly 125 years, and those are the kinds of investments that we need to make into the next 100 years as we move into our second century as a water utility. So we do have rising costs, just like other consumers and businesses in the Bay Area. Costs of insurance go up, costs of labor go up. We're essentially in the construction industry, and anyone that knows anyone that's done any construction work knows that those costs have increased tremendously. We also have costs of regulatory compliance that we have to bear. Wonderful programs that the state of California knows are important. For example, the lead sampling that we did at schools across our service area were unfunded mandates, and so we need to recoup those from our charges as well. We also have, we're touched by wildfire. Our land that we have as our watershed is absolutely adjacent to many of the areas that have burned in recent years, and we have to be cognizant of that and take precautionary measures. Seismic hazards are real in the Bay Area, and we have to be prepared to face those. And then the changes that we see in our water supply, variability associated with the changing climate. So when we look at our biennial budget for fiscal years 20 and 21, it's a total of $2.34 billion, of which 2/3 represents debt service, which is our equivalent of a mortgage, which allows us to take a portion of our capital and spread that out over the next generation. So the person that is living in your house when you move in 10 years will also pay for the cost of the improvements that we're making, not just you. With regards to our 5-year capital improvement program, this shows the cash flows for water and wastewater, and it shows the 5-year total investment is projected at $1.9 billion on the water side and $234 million on the wastewater side. The wastewater plant was originally constructed in the 1950s. So with regards to our water system, our customers and our board may want to know what kinds of capital projects are going to be included. So the surge in infrastructure in the next 2 years includes $110 million of work in areas like Oakland, El Cerrito, Berkeley, Orinda, and Lafayette. And added crews are going to help reach the 20 miles of pipeline replacement goal that we have at the end of this 2-year period. Another $110 million will be used to replace large water transmission pipes, including some of the aqueducts that we showed earlier that are bringing the water from the Sierra foothills into the East Bay. We will also be spending $170 million on improvements in El Sobrante, in Oakland, in Walnut Creek, and Orinda. This will improve reliability and water quality by upgrading water treatment plants, pumping plants, and local reservoirs. This allows us to deal with the change in water quality that we see as a result of the changing climate, changing water supply that's required as a result of drought, and other factors. On the wastewater side, we will be spending $70 million over the course of the next 2 years, rehabilitating large sewer interceptors, pump stations, and making improvements to our 1950 wastewater plant that has served us well. On item 14, we have the accompanying 20 and 21 position resolution that accompanies, again, the budget. So the total authorized full-time employees will increase from 2,115 to 2,154.75 in FY20 and 2,152.75 in 21. A .75 employee represents an intermittent employee, which allows someone to work part-time. So additional changes have been proposed, but there is no net change in the authorized FTEs. We would like to point out one proposed position change since the March 26th workshop, and the position resolution has been updated so that it's consistent with district standards for competitive advancement for the 2 following positions: the utility laborers and water distribution plumbers. Basically what that means is that the original resolution didn't allow for the fact that as people advance in their careers, that they move up. And so this net change will be absorbed within the budget. We haven't made any changes, and it's about $55,000 this year. The position resolution also includes deletion of obsolete classifications, which include Administrative Services Supervisor 2, Assistant Capital Projects Coordinator, Concrete Finishers 1A and 2A, which are now done by the Utility Labor Classification, Dispatcher, Meals and Lodging Coordinator, Paving Breaker, and Supervising Telephone Radio Operator. So I did want to cover the Proposition 218 protest provisions that are provided for in the law. So if written protests are received by a majority of the affected parcel owners and tenants directly liable for the payment of our water and wastewater service charges, then the proposed rate changes cannot be implemented. So within the service area of the district, we have 383,000 water service accounts and 176,000 wastewater service accounts. As of June the 10th, 53 valid written protests have been received, which does not constitute a majority protest. And with that, I will turn it back to President Bell.
Okay, thank you, Sophia. There's a lot of information. Hopefully it was helpful to those of you in the audience. We do have a number of speaker cards, and this is the beginning of the public comment period. A reminder, if you want to file a formal protest, you must file it in writing at the back of the room before the hearing ends. Your blue card is not enough. Obviously, it's enough to make your comments, but it is not enough to count as a formal protest. I think it's about 15 cards. So if folks could really focus their comments, that would be great, but you do have 3 minutes. Our first speaker, Zane Van Arsdale, sorry. And also, let me announce the next two so that you know you're coming up. Jamila Woods and Judith Gottlieb are the next two after Sam. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Zane Van Arsel. I'm a volunteer advocate with Service Workers Project for Affordable Utilities and Water. SWAPOW. SWAPOW! Participated in over 15 hearings in front of all or parts of this body, and we will keep coming back until East Bay MUD makes water affordable for working people. We're here today to oppose the $65.8 million rate increase East Bay MUD has proposed, as well as East Bay MUD's continued practice of shutting off an average of 50 families' waters a day. We demand no rate increase until the shutoffs are stopped. We acknowledge that future infrastructure is critically important and that climate change action is really expensive, and we know that East Bay MUD does not have the funds to magically invest in these infrastructure projects and to cut the rates in half. But low-income workers don't have the funds either, and East Bay MUD continues to wring these people out and deny them basic human rights. We ask that East Bay MUD join with SWAPOW to demand the state provide relief. And we need relief. Prices are rising and the wages are not keeping up.
Yes.
With Oakland's minimum wage of $13.80, a worker would have to work almost 60 hours just to cover the average $3,300 rent for a two-bedroom apartment, which is 16% higher than last year. And that's just for the rent. That doesn't include food and utilities. Given these realities, it is no wonder that there are 200 homeless camps in Oakland alone and nearly 7,000 homeless individuals in Alameda County. And this economic reality is not just for those in the lowest income bracket. A recent study shows that 63% of the population of the U.S. would be in a catastrophic condition if they had an emergency that cost $500 or more. And I'm a student at UC Berkeley where 1 out of 9 students are homeless. I've witnessed these conditions personally and after having worked to prevent water shutoffs for low-income families throughout the East Bay with SWAPOW. People are teetering on the edge. One bad thing happens and their life spirals out of control as they fall behind on payments. A striking example of this for me was a case of a woman who came in last December. She was a science teacher at Oakland Unified School District. She got pregnant with her second child, and the school district decided to lay her off as a result. Soon after she lost her job, a fire was started in a homeless encampment near her and ended up burning her house half to the ground and destroying everything inside. She was forced to move and did not get any form of reimbursement from the city. Jobless and with almost none of her belongings left, she could no longer afford her water, and East Bay MUD took that away from her too. With her newborn baby, she was forced to live almost a week without water, and we had to fight tooth and nail to get that back on. Okay. Part of your mission statement is to provide high-quality water and wastewater services at fair and reasonable rates for the people of the East Bay. In your strategic overview, you add the word legal as well. I would like to briefly address the proposed rate increase with your own criteria in mind from our perspective. First, your rate increase violates state law. Assembly Bill 685 passed 2012 declares that every human being has the right to safe, clean, affordable, and accessible water. Since that bill was passed 7 years ago, by your own statistics, East Bay MUD has shut off over 80,000 families' water for their inability to pay. Now, maybe East Bay MUD has a different legal interpretation of affordable or human beings that we at SWAPOW aren't aware of, but if not, then I would argue that East Bay MUD's proposed rate increase, which would undoubtedly create even more shutoffs, does not follow state law. Secondly,
Wrap up. Sorry.
Yeah.
Let him speak! Let him speak! Let him speak!
Secondly, the rates are anything but fair. It is not fair that low-income workers have to use higher percentage of their income to pay for water. Finally, it is not reasonable that anyone should have to choose between feeding themselves, having electricity, or having clean water in their homes. Raising rates would force more of these people into this untenable state and would create even more shutoffs. Your board is responsible for implementing policies consistent with your mission statement. If you feel you can't adhere to your mission as we do, then we ask that you go to the state of California and fight for the money your constituents desperately need.
Thank you. I really, we need to accommodate everybody, and so if you please, thank you. Your comments are important, and we want to hear all of them. But please try to keep your comments to the 3-minute mark, and I'll give people a 30-second warning if that would be helpful. Next up, Jamila Woods.
Hey, Jamila!
Good afternoon. My name is Jamila Woods, and I am a member and active volunteer of SWAPOW. I'm one of those families living in Section 8 housing and in fear that our building could be bought up at any day and our rent double and triple, which would be beyond anything we could afford. I was born and raised in Berkeley, California, and have had to go through a lot of struggle in my life. When I met volunteers at SWAPOW, I was homeless. If it wasn't for SWAPOW, I would not have been able to keep up with the rising costs of living in the Bay Area. But here I am. It wasn't until I saw with the rising cost of living in the Bay Area. Oh, it wasn't until I saw Swapal advocating for one of our members that I realized how bad poverty is in this country. I live right around the corner from the office, so I see this every day. Another Swapal member is a caregiver for her 2 disabled children, as well as myself, for over 20-something years, and came to us with a water bill over $1,500. She and her children are disabled and have asthma, and we require water for their breathing machine. Swapal advocates went back and forth with East Bay MUD customer service manager Latrice King and finally got this member's water back on. Another member from Kenya has 2 children. Her father became mortally ill and she had to spend over $12,000 to care for him until he died. She worked as an Uber driver but lost her job after being in a car accident. It all led up to her water being shut off for over 5 weeks. Even after we got Allen Temple to pay $500, East Bay MUD still would not turn her water back on. After back and forth with Andrew Lee, we finally got East Bay MUD to lower the restoration fee to $250, and then it took several more joint calls with St. Vincent de Paul to get them to cover that cost. Overall, it took us 3 weeks to get our water back on. Yes. The member said, hands down, her experience with East Bay MUD and how hard it was to get her water turned back on showed her that this is the most corrupt country she has ever been in. Do not approve East Bay MUD's proposed $65.8 million rate increase, balancing your 30 seconds budget on the backs of those least able to pay for it. Your credit ratings may go down, but your ratings with the public you were elected to serve will go up. What is more important, people's unilateral need for water or credit rating agencies' need for profits. Stop the shutoffs to low-income families, please.
We have Daniela Dula and Matt Scott.
My name is Judith Gottlieb, and I recently retired after working as a registered nurse for Kaiser Permanente for 30 years. I'm speaking to you today as an East Bay MUD customer and as a volunteer advocate for the Service Workers Project for Affordable Utilities and Water, or SAPAW. SAPAW! As SAPAW last came before the East Bay MUD Water Board, the State Water and Resource and Control Board issued a report on January 3rd. Options for the implementation of a statewide low-income water rate assistance program. The report cites on page 7, the problem of unsafe drinking water is an urgent public health crisis and solutions are already well developed. Hundreds of thousands of Californians lack access to safe drinking water. Yes. This is including right here in Alameda and Contra Costa counties. On page 8, the report states that when families are unable to pay their bills, they face difficult and highly consequential trade-offs, like skipping meals, going hungry, risking eviction, and facing potential disconnection of electric, gas, and water services. On page 10, the report states that if water is unaffordable, low-income households will likely either consume less water than is healthy or consume less of other vital goods and services to pay for the water they need. In other words, low-income households face trade-offs that harm their health and welfare. One example of this is the city of Detroit, where 156,000 households struggled with increased water rates alongside necessary electrical costs for heating during a frigid winter. A study by Henry Ford Hospital examined the public health implications for water shutoffs in the city of Detroit. By analyzing waterborne illnesses and comparing them to the home addresses of water shutoffs, researchers found that the patients diagnosed with skin and soft tissue diseases were 148% more likely to live on a block that experienced water shutoffs. So following the release of the study in July of 2017, a panel of experts, including physicians, called for the declaration of a public health emergency in the city because of the correlation between water shutoffs and the water-related illnesses. The recent hepatitis A outbreak across parts of California among at-risk populations without permanent shelter has been partially attributed to a lack of access to water and sanitation facilities. Shutoffs and lack of affordable access to water can result in economic burden to the states.
I'm giving her a notice, she has 20 more
As
seconds.
low as income families facing these challenges incur increased health costs, some of which are subsidized by the state. Water is the most vital resource needed to ensure the health and safety of the population. East Bay MUD must be at the forefront, making change for the entire county and call on all municipalities in California and even the country in demanding the appropriate state and federal funds to be used to maintain utility districts. Do not approve East Bay MUD's proposed $6.58 million rate increase, balancing your budget on the backs of those least able to pay for it.
Yes!
Until there's a moratorium on water shutoffs, no one in the community is really safe.
Thank you. Matt Scott, followed by Kathy Boston, followed by Darian Acero.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt T. Scott, ma'am.
Sorry.
That's all right. And I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. Lonnie Van Hook, who's in the hospital. He lives in East Oakland. Well, first of all, let me tell you, I'm a SWAT Power member and proud to be a SWAT Power member. Born and raised in Oakland myself, and I've never seen so many rate increases in my life. I've never seen it before. I am a Bay Area native. But anyway, I'm here on behalf of Mr. Lonnie Van Hook. He lives in East Oakland. His first injury happened when he was 26 years old and he had a bilateral amputation. He attended college, he joined the Navy, he worked at the Center for Independent Learning and in computer science jobs as well. In 2005, he experienced another injury which left him quadriplegic. Now, he's totally disabled and survives off of $800 a month. Last January, it became difficult for him to keep up with the costs incurred from his operations. He struggled each month with having to choose between paying water and paying other living expenses. EBMUD has been increasingly difficult to work with, and he said he had his water shut off a number of times. EBMUD changed their policy and now gives him no warning. The last time his water was shut off, it was literally in the middle of a sponge bath. So it wasn't until SWAT Pow intervened that they got his water turned back on. I ask that EBMUD not penalize us for being poor. We are doing our best to pay our bills in full and on time, but EBMUD must take into account the economic times we live in and what it is like surviving off of $800 a month. Do not approve EBMUD's proposed $65.8 million rate increase, balancing your budget on the backs of those least able to pay for it. This is a short-sighted policy at the cost of long-term damage to 11,000 households who end up without water every year, and it's not worth it. Stop the shutoffs to low-income families. And I have to say, if you put yourself in the position of these people, you would understand. You've never been in that position. You cannot do nothing without water. And you have children going to school, and they get their water cut off. And for the homeowners, I have to say, CAP program is only for single dwelling homes. For a duplex or multiplex, people are not eligible for CAP program. You need to have a program put in place for seniors and for duplex or multi-dwelling places so they can have a discount. And I urge you to reconsider. And thank you kindly.
Thank you. Kathy Boston, Darian Acero, and then Gwendolyn Pullman.
Pardon me, but you skipped over me.
Oh, who's?
Daniela, last name Dula.
Oh, I'm sorry. I lots of cards. Go for it.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniela Dula, and I'm a second-year community college student and a advocate with SWAT Pow. I live and work in Alameda and have personally worked and I've personally worked over a dozen cases of water shutoff, especially in low-income migrant families in our country. The State Water Resource Control Board issued a report on January 3rd entitled Options for Implementation of a Statewide Low-Income Water Rate Assistance Program, or LIRA. They declare that the State Water Board is committed to achieving the human right to water in full. Page 5 of the report states using 200% of the federal poverty level as baseline eligibility criteria for LIRA, programs would mean that for many water systems, more than 50% of their customers would be eligible for assistance. Assembly Bill 401 calls for the development of statewide LIRA to assist low-income households in paying their water bill, as AB 685 calls for the human right to water. Yes. We need safe, affordable drinking water. And I ask East Bay MUD to think outside the box. The catastrophic changes in weather patterns have brought record numbers of extreme temperatures and more extremes of precipitation and drought in the Bay Area. That is like the record heat that we're experiencing right now. Forcing families to live without water in these conditions would mean death for some. The United States estimates that by the year 2030, 40% of the world's population will not have access to clean drinking water. Unless major changes are enacted now, this is due to part of government not standing up for what the people are elected to represent. We have seen time again, local, state, federal government deprioritize policies of basic human rights in favor of corporate profits. Yeah. From the water crisis in Flint, Michigan to negligence by PG&E and the lack of forest maintenance that resulted in dozens of fires in California this year alone, we have seen failures on behalf of officials that do not do what's right for the majority. Yeah. We are calling on yourselves as board members to do the right thing. On September 25th, 2015, 193 members of the United Nations, including the United States, unanimously adopted the 2030 Sustainable Development Goal. Goal number 6 states that all countries must ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. And the UN, the State Water Resources and Control Board, is committed to the human right for water. Can East Bay MUD do less? Yeah. As of the beginning of 2019, the state of California reported that 21.4 billion surplus. The state has the funds. We call on East Bay MUD to take away and a means approach. It is your job to come up with the policies and do not punish the poorest customers. We call on East Bay MUD to put on policies that are consistent with the Sustainable Development Goal number 6. Do not approve East Bay MUD's proposed $65.8 million rate increase, balancing your budget on the backs of those least able to pay for it. Place a moratorium on water shutoffs for families living or below the federal poverty level now. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you Kathy? Okay, so I have Kathy Boston, Darian Acero, and then Gwendolyn Kuhlman.
My name is Kathy Boston. I'm a retired dental hygienist and am an East Bay MUD ratepayer living in Oakland. I'm a volunteer advocate with softball. I had no idea how many families' water East Bay MUD turns off before I began volunteering with softball. It is shocking to me in this economic climate how difficult it is to get East Bay MUD to restore water to families who urgently need it. On top of that, the assistance program East Bay MUD offers, the Customer Assistance Program, CAP, is utterly inadequate and to this day rarely do East Bay MUD customer service representatives even offer it to their low-income customers. Blaise Boba, Executive Director of St. Vincent de Paul, witnessed a case firsthand when he participated in a benefit utility advocacy session with softball. The case involved a grandmother who has custody of her grandchildren. Their water was shut off. 3 different East Bay MUD customer service representatives and supervisors never once mentioned CAP as a possible resource. Boba said he was shocked to witness this after East Bay MUD announced their campaign to publicize CAP at a recent public hearing he attended. Prior to that, East Bay MUD had only 3% to 6% enrollment in the CAP program, even though about 40% of ratepayers are eligible in Alameda and Contra Costa counties. We demand that you make an offer to each family whose water is still shut off due to bill non-payment to wipe that slate clean, turn their water back on, and remove the punitive deposits and fines from their bill now, and work out a payment plan retroactively for what they still owe on their bill consistent with the principles I just outlined. Do not approve East Bay MUD's proposed $65.8 million rate increase, balancing your budget on the backs of those least able to pay for it. Place a moratorium on water shutoffs and make water rates affordable for families living at or below the federal poverty level now. Thank you.
Darian Acero. Nassaro, followed by Gwendolyn Pullman, followed by Esther Matthews.
Good afternoon, y'all. My name is Darian Nassaro, but I'm going to be reading words prepared by Paul Sanford, who's a longtime West Oakland resident and has been a volunteer advocate for over a year and a half with SWPOW. So these are Paul's words. I have to say I'm totally frustrated with your East Bay MUD customer service department. I call there at least 5 times or more a week, and almost every time I can to negotiate a payment plan to get water service turned back on. And East Bay MUD representatives almost never offer a payment plan that our members can afford. East Bay MUD consistently tells us to call the assistance agencies, even though we explain over and over that the agencies are very, very limited in funds. It is East Bay MUD's responsibility to get our low-income members' water back on. When I call agencies that offer financial assistance like St. Vincent de Paul to see if they can make a pledge, they tell me that they are swamped with cases and that they will only make a pledge if we get East Bay MUD to make an affordable payment plan. But East Bay MUD won't give us an affordable payment plan until we get a pledge from a charity. It's a catch-22 and our members are stuck with their water off for days and weeks, and in a few cases, months at a time. Then on top of that, last year, then Customer Services Director Sherry Hong launched the East Bay MUD Water Lifeline program. Despite doing water utility almost daily, we have yet to see a single person get help from this quote-unquote lifeline program. If you look up on East Bay MUD's website, it says East Bay MUD recently partnered with St. Vincent de Paul Society of Alameda County and Catholic Charities of the East Bay to launch a new program that supports East Bay MUD customers who are facing an emergency and cannot pay their bills, end quote. Then it proceeds to explain how you can donate to it, but not how you can actually receive assistance from it. Catholic Charities Daily sends all water cases to us, and St. Vincent de Paul in Alameda County says they have no additional funding and can only approve about 1/3 of cases that we ask them to. They say they have never heard of the Lifeline program. 6 months ago, we spoke with one of the organizers with St. Vincent de Paul in Contra Costa County, who said that they are so swamped and so underfunded that they can only help 1 case per week. We have families who regularly call us from Contra Costa County saying St. Vincent de Paul there tells people they won't handle water anymore. No one answers the phone at the Contra Costa County St. Vincent de Paul. You have to just leave a message and hope to be called back. Therefore, there is only a 30% chance that someone will get help in Alameda County and close to a 0% chance that someone will get help in Contra Costa County. This is why East Bay MUD doesn't make a customer an affordable payment plan. They're guaranteeing that family will continue to live without water because there's literally little to no assistance. Almost daily, people call our office and say that they were referred to us, that East Bay MUD gave them a list of people to call and that we are A, the only one who will answer the phone, and B, the only ones who have told them that we can actually do anything with their case. Yes. We demand that you turn low-income families' water back on and remove the punitive deposits and fines from their bills now. We demand that you work out a payment plan retroactively for what they still owe on their bill, consistent with the principles I just outlined. Do not approve East Bay MUD's proposed $65.8 million rate increase, balancing your budget on the backs of those least able to pay for it. Place a moratorium on water shutoffs and make water rates affordable for families living at or below the federal poverty level now. Thank you.
Gwendolyn Pullman, followed by Esther Matthews, followed by Priscilla Aguilar.
President Young, Board of Directors. My name is Gwendolyn Coleman. I've been a volunteer advocate with SWPOW for just over 1 year. I have personally worked on over 25 water shutoff cases for low-income families all over the East Bay, including a case for a member in Contra Costa County that recently struck close to home. While giving birth at the hospital, EBMUD came to her home and shut her water off. She came home with a newborn to a house with no water. We at SWPOW worked tirelessly, but we couldn't convince EBMUD to come down on your fees and comply with your responsibility to this member to provide her water she could afford. She had to go to St. Vincent de Paul to find the funds to restore her water. Her water was finally turned back on after it had been turned off for a week. The first week of her child's life, she had no running water. She was forced to bathe her newborn with bottled water. Since I am pregnant myself, I realized that day that my husband and I are trying to bring a child into a city where if you are a low-income worker, you do not have a human right to water. Yes! Low-income workers in the East Bay are constantly walking this fine line. I see it over and over again. one income in a household falls away because of a death or disability, hours are cut, an emergency arises, and suddenly it's a choice between paying the rent or paying for water. EBMUD, it is time you practice your mission statement. Is your responsibility first and foremost to the people in your district, or is it to your bondholders? If it is to the people to whom you are obligated to provide fair and reasonable rates, you'll go to California State Legislature and tell them they must fund AB 685. Tell them that you cannot comply with state law by raising fees and shutting off water, and you can no longer have a charity like St. Vincent de Paul subsidize hundreds of your bills and still call your water affordable. Yes! No tinkering of programs will cover such a massive bleed. Our demands remain the same. Restore your integrity and serve the people again by doing the following. 1, do not approve the proposed $65.8 million rate increase, balancing your budget on the backs of those who are least able to afford it. 2, install a permanent moratorium on disconnection of water services for any customer whose income is at or below the federal poverty level. 3, make reasonable accommodations for payment plans for any customer whose income is at or below 200% of the federal poverty level. 4, cancel arrears for ratepayers below 300% of the poverty line. 5, eliminate disconnection and reconnection fees for any customer whose income is at or below 200% of the federal poverty level in order to end this unaffordable punitive measure against the poor. 6, allow payment plans for arrears accounts to extend to 24 months to provide more affordability to low-income customers. I only have 2 more points. 7, install rate adjustments so that household water costs do not exceed 2% of household income per federal standards for any customer whose income is at or below 200% of the federal poverty level. And 8, immediately cease the practice of charging an additional deposit to customers who fail to make on-time payments on several occasions in this unaffordable, punitive measure against the poor. Thank you for your time.
Matthews, followed by Priscilla Aguilar, followed by Albert Kuffner. And I did get one card that's from Stephen Wong that says it's for public forum. Is this intended for the current item?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's item 11, actually.
Good afternoon, my name is Esther Matthews. I'm here actually standing on behalf of myself, just speaking to the heart and the mind of the people. We're very much hard workers. I don't even have children. I have 9 nieces and nephews. And without water, they can't bathe, they cannot eat. Their attendance and their behavior at school is certainly affected. A lot of times as adults, we can fend for ourselves. But when you're taking care of the little ones who have no choice but to lean and depend on you, what can you do? I have 2 degrees. I have a plethora of accomplishments and credentials, and so do the people who sit behind me. Sometimes we're stereotyped because we are low income, but we're very, very, very hardworking people, and we work together. I have seen the bills that have come through. I have seen the help that is needed, and we're asking, please, do not push through the rate increase. Every penny counts nowadays. We see what the world is. We don't have a bird's eye view. We don't have a tunnel vision. We need to look at the bigger picture. We're just trying to live. That is it. This is a natural resource that has been put a dollar amount onto it.
Yes.
That's not how God intended this to be. We're supposed to work together in our communities, in our environments, as family, as people. And regardless of what your belief may be, it's water. It's water. Like, you guys have water sitting there. But do you imagine that somebody's paying for it? So that glass of water that you may have, or in that canteen there, it looks different to you. In our perspective, that water is much different for us. I've worked in corporate, I've worked as a missionary, and I've worked in ministry, and to see that people, no one is asking for Nikes. We're not asking for anything name brand. We're asking for water. Water. And a lot of times, the heart of the people, it does need to come back into our PowerPoint presentations, because while everybody else is sleeping at night, there are people who are up trying to figure out how to get from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. The commute to work and to school and to get everybody where they need to be, it can be very cumbersome. So if you can really, I know they had to speak quickly through their speeches and everything like that, but we are asking you, please, just reconsider. Like, take the average family and look at what we're trying to do. And I promise you, we are still out here working together and going to jobs. Thank you so much.
Albert Kuffner, and then Walden Carlson.
Well, thank you for having some kind of a forum where people can speak. In the future, if your presentations could have closed captioning, I'd appreciate it, because then I would know what was happening. So I did get that 80 cents out of $1 is going toward paying the services that we get. So I want to speak to the fact that there's no communication. There's no way to report something like a sinkhole that's happening in your street. I'm told to report it to the city on an online thing where there's only a little square pothole. There's nothing to say. There's a sinkhole. So for 2 years I tried to report a sinkhole. The only forum available was that online City Oakland pothole thing. There was no responsibility for waste structures. I spoke to an EBMUD person that happened to be, in front of my house, and they didn't investigate. They said it was the sewer and that was the city problem. Don't I pay for waste when I'm doing my EBMUD bill? And then there was this horrible response time when the water main finally burst and it was spewing 30 feet in the air. Chunks of pavement broke a hole in my roof. It took them an hour to come and shut the water off, an hour. And each time I called EBMUD, they're like, well, it's 7 o'clock at night. We don't have crews. 7 o'clock at night. Took an hour. And then EBMUD refused to help me pay for my roof. And I would say that I am poor. I don't know what to say. There's no system of reporting. For the 15 years that I've lived on that street, I've smelled sewage and gas for 15 years.
Yes!
And they're finally doing all this drilling, right? And they're doing it in the middle of the night. And when I go to talk to them about it, they say, well, we don't want to disturb any businesses. But it's a residential neighborhood, and you're doing this at 1 a.m. in the morning. So now they're doing it again a couple of years later now, and there's these gigantic holes. I don't see any trucks carrying away the soil.
Yep, 30 seconds.
Are these sinkholes that you're trying to repair now? After 15 years of people trying to tell you about it? You guys look bored and sleepy for the most of the time that people are saying they're too bored to pay you. What about when, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I just don't know what to say. You're taking money off my property tax. And now I'm paying it every month. I wish you would wake up and not look so sleepy and bored.
If you're able to provide your address or willing to provide your address, somebody would follow up with you about the things that you said that weren't getting dealt with. Albert Kuffner, Walden Carlson, Terry Warren.
Albert Kuffner from All Immediate Interface Climate Action Network. There's this, in the Jewish faith, there is this celebration around February 20th every year where they plant trees. It's the Arbor Day for the Jewish girls. And there's a maxim that goes along with that planting, and that is judge your day not by the harvest that you reap, but by the seeds that you plant. And the harvest that you reap here today are weeds that are choking other people. The weeds of a $65.8% million increase that is not for the future, but for really, that probably even the loss of hope and even life maybe of some ratepayer somewhere. And so I think it's, and there's a kind of a mechanism, it's kind of a middling mechanism that business uses. It's like, for example, last year you had a 19% rate increase, okay? Well, then this year you have another increase. Well, that's a strategy that you plan in advance and makes a mockery of this whole whatever is going on here today. Because that was probably planned in advance a year ago. And that was your strategy for getting as much money as you possibly could for whatever purpose that you wanted.
Right, right.
And so that is not planting seeds for the future. That's just ripping and running with whatever you can get for this. And that's just typical of business, you know. I was laid off once from Interstate Bank of California because the managers weren't going to get their bonus that quarter. So they just wiped out an entire division that hurt the long-term profitability of First Interstate Bank. You notice that there is no First Interstate Bank here in California anymore? So what I'm saying is that do what you sort of said you were doing at the beginning with that beautiful green landscape that you had on the screen. There was a lot of trees there. And in the Bible, whenever they want to do something new, or they go someplace, Abraham goes to the promised land, he plants a tree. When somebody's born, they plant a tree. The Bible itself is called the tree of life. So please, folks, get with the tree of life.
Yes, thank you. Okay, next we have Walden Carlson, followed by Terry Warham, followed by Nathan Moon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the board, and staff. First of all, I'd like to thank the weather today for helping me demonstrate a little bit about what I'm talking about. And that is that when it gets warm, people use more water. It's amazing how that seems to work out. But as an example, I think everybody would agree that people who live in Palm Springs probably use quite a bit more water than people who live in San Francisco because of the nature of the climate. I would like to really respectfully disagree with Sophia regarding that you're in compliance with Prop 218. I disagree very strongly about that. I've worked in capital budgeting for quite a few years for another utility. And one thing that I know about budgeting is that it is not an exact science. It is basically one that's built on a lot of assumptions and ideas and needs and different things that interact what the budget consists of and how it's built and used. It was my experience that as a professional budget person, that I could probably create just about any budget that my leadership asked, and I could make it so that it could be defensible to almost anybody. The reason being that I knew way more about it than anybody else did, and that I could definitely be able to demonstrate that when asked. When I say that I disagree with the fact that you're in compliance with Prop 218, is that right now, in the hotter areas of your district, of East EBMUD's district, you have roughly 25% of your customers, and of those, you're charging almost 50%, or your income from residential water is almost 50% of your total budget. So you got roughly a fourth of your people, and they're paying roughly half of your total residential revenue. That is simply not fair. I certainly agree with the presentations that have been made prior to mine, that turnoffs and the need for water for individuals is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
At the same time, I say that when you bill somebody who is using more water because of climate, it's unfair to do so to the extent that you're currently doing. In my opinion, this is sooner or later is going to catch up with EBMUD. I think it's unfair. I think it's bad business. And I think it clearly is a violation of Prop 218. I think also that when people get angry enough, that you're going to end up with investigations and lawsuits, and I'm just about there. And this is going to end up with basically a lot of lawyers making an awful lot of money, and it's all going to be done at the expense of your ratepayers. I would really ask sincerely that you take a look at your Tier 3 rates and lower them instead of raising them at this point. I think that wouldn't solve the problem, but it would certainly help. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nathan Moon, and then Diane Kopp.
Madam President, members of the board, my name is Terry Warren. I live in Danville, California. I recently retired about a year ago. The reason I'm here is I'm just fed up. I've heard a lot of very painful stories shared up until now, but my concern is that since I've moved here, I just see a mercantile approach to extracting the maximum amount of money out of my wallet to pay for water. And notwithstanding all of the other issues, I do think that the rather lofty aspirations around climate action, I just see dollar signs going off. I see another opportunity to spend a whole lot of money, which is going to end up increasing bills even further in the future. There is no oversight agency for EBMUD, so we have this process where a majority of ratepayers have to file a protest, which is practically an impossibility. I saw the numbers for the number of protests that were filed. I would flip that around. I will tell you, based on my experience, talking to anybody and everybody I know in Danville, 90+% are furious, fed up, they've had it with this relentless increase. If we could have each had salary increases maybe a third of these levels over the last 10, 15 years, we would probably be very, very happy. I just see no restraint. I mean, since 2006, a $100 bill, this year will be $261. That just seems unrestrained and unreasonable to me. Sorry. I'm one of those people, I guess I'm fortunate. I live in an area that's a little bit elevated, so I have this lift charge, 30-something% surcharge on top of my tiered water rates. That goes up, every time you make one of these increases, it goes up the same amount. I don't think electricity has gone up to 160% over this time frame. So why is that being done? It just, again, feels like profiteering at my expense. I would really like to see EBMUD resort to what I saw in the corporate world for the 37 years I worked there, which is called self-help. And there needs to be a priority around efficiency, around just restraint. Do we need to do this? Can we put it off for a year? Are there ways that we could do things less expensively? I must say, I suspect that if you looked at the details, that salary programs, the bonuses, the health care, the defined benefit pension plan, these are things that I'm sure every employee of EBMUD has a very comfortable existence, and it's probably getting even more so. There's a union workforce to implement all of the construction that I see around the neighborhood. Inevitably, when I see a crew doing what appears to be basic work, it's new vehicles or newish vehicles, and lots of people, half of them standing around observing what the other half are actually doing. So it's just a cultural thing, and I just appeal to the board to really try to extract some real efficiencies moving forward and just keep us in mind. We're the ones that pay the bills at the end of the day.
Yes.
Thank you.
Nathan Moon, Diane Kopp, Frank Darby, I think is.
How are you? I'm
I'm Nathan Moon. I'm the outreach director for E8X NCPC, that's in the Neighborhood Services section of the Oakland Police Department. And I'm going to give you a quick boundary on that because I only represent so many people. That's 21st Street to 42nd, and here's one more. And from 980 to the lake. And I really want to congratulate you guys on the passage of the Climate Action Plan. That's very important to our beat. And it shows me that one way that East Bay Mud is a real innovator. And I'm hoping to share another way that East Bay Mud can be setting itself apart from all other districts. Our board ordered an independent analysis of the rating tiers. And as we learned in the presentation, customers who use the most water pay the lowest unit cost. And strangely, this is the opposite of other utilities. For instance, PG&E's tiered rates charge more for using more power, and this protects the low-income households who use minimums. In the presentation, we also learned that East Bay Mud's tiers are priced with the household use maximum. It makes a ton of sense, right? Because extra usage doesn't have the wastewater charge. I totally get it. But the Department of Race and Equity suggests that this is an equity issue. Okay, so water units that are eligible for wastewater fees, those ones that we go down the drain, need to be considered and necessary for drinking and bathing. More water than that shouldn't be charged at a lower rate, because more water than what can go down our drain is luxury water. It should be charged at a higher rate, and ironically it's not. So the Northgate neighbors recommend that the board considers restructuring pricing tiers and even consider a flat fee for maximum users to offset the costs of the lowest tier. In this way, East Bay Mud can be a leader in yet another way. Climate and now equity. Make East Bay Mud the first district in the country with equity pricing. Thank you very much.
Diane Kopp, Frank Darby, and then the final card I have is for Stephen Wong.
Good afternoon. I'm Diane Kopp. I'm from Alamo. And you know, when we first moved to California, it was the land for opportunity in 1984. And I have seen so many rate increases. I believe in rate increases, but not to the amount that it's happened. And I am a single person who takes in homeless people that need to bathe, need to do their wash. And my nice yard, I took out the grass 8 years ago, and it's down to bark. And the few plants I do have that the deer don't eat, it sort of looks nice, but now I will have to let my backyard go too. You know, I understand drought. I grew up in an area where I carried water. I didn't have running water. For bathing, for laundry, and what we didn't consume, we carried out. I just didn't think I'd be living in California watching my water so closely that I am now telling my people, 2 minutes in the shower, you rinse, you soap, then you rinse. I just think that the rate increases have just been not fair. This is certainly not worse than what I've been hearing. These people that the water has been shut off. I'm fortunate I'm retired and I can pay for it, but it really isn't fair that now when I go down side roads in our county, that they have new plants, new everything, irrigation, and yet my backyard and the people that I help support are down to a 2-minute shower. So I would like for you to reconsider the fact that it's just not a matter of not enough water. We have enough water, but to allocate appropriately and not put another rate increase on the people that pay for all East Bay Mud. So please think about it. And I'm not speaking just for me, I'm speaking for a lot of people in my area Yes. Everybody complains.
Yes.
So thank you for your time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Frank Darby, followed by Stephen Wong. And that's the last card I have, so if there are any other cards, you need to get them up pretty quick. Frank Darby or Danby? Is he here? Okay, Stephen Wong.
Hey everybody, I've been in one of these before or spoken, so I'm not kind of out of my element. My thoughts were less anecdotal, more so not about hard times or affordability or things like that. Those themes those were discussed, but my thoughts were more so around the proportion of the bills with infrastructure and carrying the load and with water usage. And just to provide a little context, I'm a SF native, and all I mean by saying that is just that I'm born and raised here and I lived in Sunset, in-law for the past 14 years. So I don't come here with affluence or anything, but I do live here now. I'm coming here with fresh eyes and I'm seeing the bills now that I'm fronting the bills for myself. I'm seeing the bills since November, and now that I've had a couple months to see some patterns, I'm paying about $160 for about 2 months, $80 a month. So about 2 months ago, the last statement, I called EBMUD to decipher what was going into the bill. Because I'm barely home, I'm working about 60 hours a week. And they were telling me that I only use one unit, and I don't really know what that means. But apparently that's only $3.76. So out of the $80, or out of the $160, I'm only paying $3.76 for the water. The rest of it, and I did the math, that's basically 1.887%. So the large proportion of the bill that I'm paying, which is fine, I need the water, is carrying the load of the infrastructure. And again, I'm seeing with fresh eyes now. And so my thought is that not so much the cost for the infrastructure or things like that, I have my own opinions on that, but if instead of the individual is carrying some of the load, if it's being passed on to businesses or other things too. So for context, right now I'm an underwriter. So we deal with risk, we do exposure, liability, all those different things right now in my daily life. And I don't know if individuals are taxing the system. Obviously, collectively, there's a lot of usage, but there's no bottlenecks with 1 unit of water passing through the pipes wherever you have businesses or et cetera. So my thought too is where would the source come from? I mean, I know obviously Oakland is losing revenue from the Warriors and Raiders, and there's other challenges and things like that too. But there may be other ways to incentivize businesses to continue to do business in Oakland while they front some of the financial load and maybe get some other incentive to stay, so that less pressure is on the individual paying at least that type of proportion of the bill. They're basically subsidizing this increase, and that it's shared with other people that may have more ability to do so. And not to simplify or condescend, but sometimes I think of it as with being from the West Coast here and stuff like that, where it's family sharing 3 apples or 2 apples, where other people have 20 apples. And just thinking that they have room to give.
Thank you. Dr. Lenny has a flight that he needs to, international flight that he needs to catch, so do you want to say something before you go?
I appreciate that. So I want to start out by saying I really appreciate everyone who has come here today, taking the time. I know people have jobs, these are meetings during the day, it's harder to get here and to take the time to do that, and heard everyone here and appreciate the challenges that you've had to face personally and with the volunteers at SWPA. I think you do tremendous work. I appreciate when I have an opportunity to help in any way to move things forward. But we have a number of issues that constrain our ability to do everything that we'd like to do to provide safe and affordable water. There's more that we can do, there's more we should do. We haven't given up, but we're constrained, I think, as many people know, by Proposition 218, which says we can't use ratepayer money to subsidize customers. We're challenged by trying to make a blanket exemption of it, no water shutoffs, because there are people that would take advantage of that, and so we have to, we have to do everything we can to not reach that situation where there is a water shutoff. It's a terrible thing when that has to happen. That enforcement mechanism has to be used, but it's one of the things that is kind of the last thing that we end up doing. We're strained by other things that are on our bill that make the water seem expensive. Our rates, I think, are still in line with I know are in line with the rates that we see in the rest of the Bay Area. But other things are put on our bill by local authorities. Those aren't covered by the rate assistance programs that we are able to offer, and that also makes a challenge. I also think it's very difficult. I've heard stories, I've talked to some of you about trying to get money, when the bills and the penalties and things have added up, to then try and pay it down. We try to come up with a payment plan. Sometimes it still needs some outside help. To depend on charities to give that, I think is not fair to everyone, not fair to the charities, not fair to you. I would like to look into more our Lifeline program to see how that's coming along, or if there's something we need to do for that. I support AB 685, the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Act. I do believe that water is a right. Clean water is a right to all citizens, no matter your income or where you live. I think it's a statewide problem. It's not just a local one. We see what's going on here. And I'd like to see the East Bay MUD get behind that and solve this problem on a statewide basis. But in the end, I don't see that not raising our rates to keep up with inflation, to pay for the infrastructure that we need to replace in order to provide safe drinking water is the solution here. I think we need to find solutions that are tuned to the equity problems, the low-income problems that we're facing, and I fully dedicate myself to finding the solutions and being part of that. And I apologize greatly that I have to leave. I didn't anticipate that this would be the meeting that would go over what we usually do, but I do have to leave.
Thank you, Director Lenny. We're going to take other director comments, but first I'm going to close the public hearing and make an announcement. And then we'll take additional director comments as we go through the agenda items. Okay, so the public hearing is closed. The district has 383,311 water service customers and 176,947 wastewater service customers. The Secretary of the District has advised us that we have received 66 valid written protests from the record owners of parcels upon which water and wastewater service rates and charges are proposed to be imposed, or tenants who are directly liable for the payment of the proposed water service rates and charges. There were also 13 invalid protests. Based on the number of valid written protests submitted prior to the close of the public hearing, a majority of protests does not exist for the adoption of the proposed water and wastewater service rates and charges. Accordingly, the proposed rates and charges may be adopted and implemented by the district upon approval of the board. So we're supposed to have items 12, 13, and 14 on the screen. So we're on agenda item 12.1, which is to adopt consider adopting the rates and charges subject to Prop 218. Sophia is available for additional questions from the board, and we can take board comments.
I I was going to say that, as many of our speakers have alluded or said directly, clean water and sanitation is the backbone of public health, and both of the issues of East Bay MUD's aging infrastructure and the need to make the investments to provide the reliable supply of water and wastewater treatment, and the real issues of affordability of housing, water, electricity, and more are significant. Staff have been working to advocate to make sure that the state knows that we have low-income customers right here in the East Bay. They tend to think of areas like the Central Valley as having low-income customers and not realizing that we have a very serious issue here. I also wanted to say that our rate structure is currently structured so that large water users do pay their fair share of costs, that they pay proportionally in revenues to the water that they use. I also wanted to comment on our elevation surcharge. The gentleman that commented is correct. It's not just electricity. We are able to serve most of our customers by gravity, and thankfully that's a wonderful thing that we can do. So we have a very low carbon footprint of our water, but for customers that live above 200 feet and above 600 feet, we have an elevation surcharge, and so we don't charge everybody for the cost of the pumping plants, rehabilitating those pumping plants, buying new pumps every so often, building reservoirs and maintaining reservoirs. Those are only charged to people that live in those areas, and unfortunately for those that are living in Danville, most people in Danville aren't living in an area where they are elevation surcharge. I would welcome them to move to the lower parts of the service area where they don't need to pay that fee. I would also say that we have worked to decrease costs, like health costs, and also we have worked to do what we can with respect to this budget and bring a strong budget for the board. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from the board for Sylvia regarding the rates and charges?
I have no questions, although I don't think that was an appropriate comment.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
How about well, okay, can we have, do I have a motion?
Adoption of the rates and charges.
We'll have this discussion.
I would do items 12.1 and 12.2.
That's to be separated.
Mine, I will separate. I'll go back to item 12.1.
Second? I'll second. Okay. Discussion? Director Katz?
Thank you, President Young. I would like to thank the advocates from SWPA and other members of the public who participated in the public hearing this afternoon. I agree that water affordability is of critical importance for our community, and I think many members of the Board of Directors at East Bay MUD agree. This budget does not review our rate structure for equity. That work is up for consideration. It was discussed over this year and last year, and it's up for consideration over our next budget cycle after an updated cost of service study is done. I think that a review of water rates for equity would look at whether, for example, a fixed charge makes sense as a component to recover revenue. The more you use, the more you pay. That's equitable. And I think that for many low-income communities with residents who are conserving water, that this would provide some rate relief. We could look at in this cost of study whether the costs that are allocated to customers who are predominantly using water in tiers 2 or tier 3 are equitable, and if the district is recovering those costs associated with increased peak flows, procuring supplemental supply beyond what a customer using in primarily tier 1 is using, that could be equitable. For about a decade, on my motion, East Bay MUD has ended water shutoffs in multifamily apartment buildings. I think we need to work more on affordability for low-income residents in single-family homes. 50% off of the water bill for basic water needs for customers who are qualifying at roughly double the poverty line, I think is above what other water utilities in California are doing. And I think that we should continue to do that. Except I think when we look at customers who are earning lower than that threshold, considering somebody who may only be earning at the poverty line itself or even lower, now that discounted bill is a much greater proportion of income. it seems we should study a deeper discount for customers at such a lower income threshold, like the poverty line. Let's look at whether our administrative costs would be justifiable for the district, and whether that rate relief, if this is the right mechanism to be able to provide affordable water for everybody, because even qualifying at our current cap level may not be able to reach all of the cap participants at the right level of need. I heard the comment about payment plan guidelines. I think it would be good for the board to receive a memo about how our payment plan guidelines match up with the realities of the social safety net for someone who's transitioning from work into state disability insurance, or from work into state social security disability insurance, or who just lost their job and is on unemployment insurance while they're waiting to find a new job. So I'd like to understand the reality of what does a payment plan mean alongside what the reality of our social safety net is. And in a future board presentation in our next budget cycle, we could understand how realistic our payment plans are for people who are living on the edge of eviction or water shutoff. I don't think that actually needs to wait for the next budget cycle. I think that would be of great benefit for our customer service staff in implementing this understanding as soon as possible. The district staff presented a memo to the board on retroactive application of the customer assistance program, something that I had proposed. So that was studied, and at a workshop where we didn't have a lot of public participation, it was reported that implementing that would come back with very disproportionate administrative costs. I heard that again today, and I think it would be important to keep that conversation going and to find solutions if they can be found. Because we know that a lot of people come in to awareness of the cap with a lot of arrears already pending up, and that's a problem. Likewise, I'm not sure if we're currently applying cap adjustments to reconnection costs, but it seems like that would be fair. But for the reasons that Director Linney stated, repair of our aging infrastructure is critical. We can't simply cut the funds that we're depending on in this rate increase from the budget. When a water main breaks, it's disruptive to neighborhoods, and it wastes water and money. So the budget adds new pipeline crews to repair over 4,000 miles of pipe and to keep them in good shape before they break. So for those reasons, I will vote for the motion and will support our budget. But I think that we have heard the advocates today about affordability. I have heard you, and I want to continue to work with you on these issues.
Director Coleman and Director McIntosh.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the members of the public who spoke on this today. I don't always agree with you, Sopal, but I understand where you're coming from and those issues. I also agreed actually quite a bit with what Directors Linney and Katz said, but probably from a different perspective. I think that people need to understand that our infrastructure costs are high. A lot of them are beyond our control. We have state and federal regulations that come down the pike that say you must do this, you must do that. Therefore, we have to go forward and fix things or change things in order to meet the needs of the regulators. Something that a lot of people don't realize, and we're trying to do pipeline replacement, which I think is good. When we have a major pipeline break, and that water hits a water body, we end up getting sometimes a charge of up to $500,000 by other regulatory agencies that we have to pay. So part of our job is to make sure that we don't have those pipelines breaking, and 4,000 miles of pipeline is a lot to maintain. And as you heard, the cast iron pipe that they found was over 100 years old that they're replacing. So that's excuse me, a lot of what we're doing. Having said that, I do represent the warmer area, and people are pissed. I'll be more graphic. I mean, yeah, we had 66 valid protests. I get personal emails, that doesn't count as a valid protest. I go to Safeway, go to Ace Hardware, whatever, and people know that I'm on the board. I hear about it, and I hear how ticked off they are about how much they're paying for water. I've advocated for a long time, and I think we can actually get to someplace on an equity issue if we do water budgeting. And that can be done. You look at lot size, you look at the geographic area, you determine what is a right fair amount of water, and that's your base. It doesn't matter whether it's Alamo, Oakland, Berkeley, whatever the case. You exceed your base, you pay more for it. But that way people know what is the right amount of water that they need in order to sustain and live in whatever area they live. People are often critical of the vegetation. Well, you know, we're in a fire zone. That vegetation, if it's not living and the fires go through, there's going to be a lot of damage to property and houses, and potentially lives are lost. And it also provides an environmental benefit from not only aesthetic quality for air quality, but for birds and animals as well. I believe that, again, we should do it on climate pricing based on water budgets. You use too much, doesn't matter where you live, you pay more for that water. It's done in other parts of California, it can be done here as well. We need to think differently on how we do a lot of our approaches. I cannot support 12.1, although no, because I've advocated for a long time what we need to look at doing something in a different approach in a different way. And I think it can be done fairly to all residents, regardless of where they live. If we really want to get creative, we really want to look at how we protect the environment, how we meet our obligatory issues of paying for new infrastructure. It can be done, but we haven't done that. And I also believe that we should be looking at some of our capital projects on bonding. And that way, when we're looking at a project that's going to go 50 to 100 years, and we estimate that's how long it's going to be around, we're putting the onus on the ratepayers of today, even though the ratepayers in the future are getting that benefit. And I think it can be done in a reasonable way. We have a great bond rating, and we could be able to do more with less out the door up front. So I'm reiterating what I've said often in budget workshops, but for that reason I'll be voting no on 12.1.
So despite perceived appearances to the contrary, raising rates is truly not easy for us. We've been going through this process since January and preparing for it even before January. I've also listened to each of the speakers today, recognizing your concerns, and I look forward to finding new methods of assisting you, especially seniors in low income, who I have a special fondness for. But this increase is necessary. It's necessary to keep up with inflation. It's necessary to protect and bolster our infrastructure. And for those very reasons, I will be supporting items 12 through 14. Thank
you.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
So, rates are never an easy thing. They're not an easy thing because we do live in our communities. I'm out there in my community all the time. My neighbors, talk with them. I hear their concerns. I know that when I got elected to this seat 20 plus years ago, when we stood on that chart of water rates, we were significantly higher than we are now. Now I know what the comment's going to be. Yeah, but so what you're comparing is, are you comparing apples and oranges, or what are you doing? The actual reality is we're still, at the end of the day, looking at what we have to do. So when I hear someone talking about, well, you got to do something about your wages and benefits, the first thing that comes to mind is, just like John Coleman said, we're subject to some fairly serious regulatory requirements. We don't have workers who are doing this job, and we have to contract it out. And we don't get to contract out to a contractor that pays minimum wage. The wage cost that gets associated with that job that's contracted out is called prevailing wage. And having looked at prevailing wage and how it stacks up against our employees, there's an important factor to consider. That important factor to consider is that the employees who do the work here, their loyalty is to East Bay Mud, not to the contractor. They don't pick up and go home and say, good luck, East Bay Mud. No, because if they don't do it right, they gotta do it again. Whether it's a day as hot as today, or the nasty weather that gets brought out. I regret for the lady that spoke about how long she had to wait, and I do hope that you will give the address, your address, because we want to find out about that roof, okay? I mean, everything else I heard you say, but that caught my attention really seriously. But here's the reality. The wages and benefits that we're doing is to keep workers here. We are not being dictated to by the workers. We go through a collective bargaining process. But what we are dictated to is by the state on what we will have to pay if we go outside of our workers. The other piece that's been said, and I get this one thrown up at me all the time. You got 4,000 miles worth of pipe, and you're only replacing 15 miles? It sounds like a couple thousand years before you catch up. 400, I beg your pardon, thank you for your help. 400 years before you catch up. That's worse than the Golden Gate Bridge painters. By the time they get done with one side, you gotta turn around and go back to the other side. But what we are investing in also is technology so that we're not going to be dealing with breaks that are very expensive to fix, but to catch leaks before they become breaks. You're going to see out there in your neighborhoods stuff that look a little odd on the fire hydrants and the like. Those are listeners to catch those leaks. So yeah, there's going to be 100-year-old pipes out there. But we're going to catch those leaks before they become a break that pops something onto your roof. Lots cheaper, lots easier, and it helps us identify neighborhoods that work has to be done. This issue of proportionality, 20 plus years I have yet to try and be able to figure out what we do here, because part of it is you have a base cost. A base cost for doing business. And that base cost, yes, there's labor in it, but there's also a base cost for maintaining the meters and the like. We have to replace those meters when they wear out. We have to replace those pipes. You're not getting a bill because a pipe broke in your neighborhood. It's shared across the entire population we serve. I will be voting yes on all the items. I will be welcoming because I pushed, just as Andy has pushed, on things that we need to look at, including the connection fee, which we're not doing anything on this year until we get that study, because the connection fee was becoming a serious part of the problem of affordability on our water. So that's not changing. And I'm not doing this politically because I'm up for re-election next year. Frankly, I don't care about whether I'm up for re-election or not. What I'm saying is I cared about this because it's what my neighbors that I live with have concerns on. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak.
Director Patterson.
Yes, I join with my brothers and sisters who have already spoken. And I don't want to go through that litany again, but I do need to express to you that your concerns are our concerns, and that we will be working as we are now, exploring them. In particular, one that I had not heard before, having to do with the multi-residential areas and how they are dealt with, duplexes, triplexes, those situations. And our customer assistance program, which I think is very good. We're ahead of most of the water agencies in the state in terms of looking into and assisting those in need. Many of them live within my ward, and we've been on the front line of trying to address those problems. I think what I want to wrap up by saying is that you can't follow a course that doesn't allow you to perform anymore. Some of the suggested things would put us out of compliance, and the regulators would come after us on those issues, and it would end up costing even more money. You can't give away water free, despite what everybody wants and thinks. It's a good thing to have in the mantra, but under the MUD Act and under what the regulators hold us responsible for, we have to perform. And short of that, you wouldn't have a water district, and you might be dealing with the state. And you might not want to do that because whereas you talk about going to the state, sometimes that's the last place we can really get help from. We're working to get help from them now. And we have promises from the new governor that some of these things are going to be addressed. We too are standing by to hope that we can be part of the cadre to make that happen. I am going to be voting on all the issues in the positive. And I'm still open and available to look at the problems that we have as we go forward.
Thank you, Director Patterson. I'll make my comments brief. I think I've 1981, almost 40 years, last 40 years as an activist for clean and safe water for everyone in one capacity or another for the past 5 years on this board. And I ran for East Bay MUD because what I saw was an agency that does really think forward, but I also saw some areas that are big challenges, and among those is the fact that our infrastructure, unless we attend to it, is not going to be able to provide clean and safe water to all of our customers at some point down the road. Our pipes are 75 years old on average now. Our staff has educated me to understand that that doesn't necessarily mean that they're beyond their time. And as I approach, not nowhere near 75, but I still feel pretty good at 63 and not broken. So I can imagine that we have pipes that are going to hold up just fine for 100 years. But not all of them. And we do have to attend to that, and we have lots of other infrastructure that we have to invest in. And as our finance director said, it's, you know, in large part, think of us as a construction company, and construction costs are going up. Now, so that's why we have to adopt a budget that has a budget increase, because the cost of construction is going up, and our need to accelerate our level of investment in that infrastructure is going up. But that's separate from what I heard so many of you talking about, which is the fact that we're living in an economy right now that benefits a very small number of people, and that a very large number of people struggle. And not just struggle for their water bill, but balance paying the water bill with the electric bill, with other utilities, with, you know, putting their kids on the school bus, and etc. I get it. I've been there. I'm a single mom. I worked most of my life at an NGO. I was making more than $800 a month, but not a whole lot more than $800 a month. And it is hard. I've been there. Thank goodness I haven't ever fallen behind in any of my bills. But we do need to do more. And we've been moving more slowly than I would like towards making some of those changes. We have made some changes, and I hope we will do a lot more. And we are engaged at the state level in the LIRA conversation, and I mean, this may not be a big comfort, but a lot of what folks are looking at is the customer assistance program that we offer right now as a model to hold up statewide, because this doesn't exist in other utilities. Does it cover enough people? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What Director Katz has suggested and looking at, testing other levels, so that people making $800 a month get more benefit than people who are making 3 times that, but still eligible for CAP. Those kinds of things make sense. I would also like to see what we can do to prevent people from coming into arrears, to provide that support and those payment plans before somebody gets behind. Because it's really digging out of that hole that is the problem. We didn't mention it, but we are really working with the City of Oakland and our other cities to have them adopt cap rates for their sewer charges, and potentially to get those sewer charges off our bills. So that's really separate from this conversation. I also, have told Director Coleman and I don't necessarily agree on a lot of things. I have a district that is on both sides of the hills, and I actually think looking at budget-based rates to achieve a variety of goals, from climate to equity, makes sense. I don't think that's going to be an easy conversation, because I think we might disagree about what a climate-smart amount of water is for a particular property. But that's coming. I think that's in our next. That's in our next cycle. So I will be voting also in favor of all of the items before us, and I think we've all had our moments of conversation or comment. So we have a motion and a second on item 12.1. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
So 6 in favor and 1 opposed. The rates and charges are subject to Prop 218 are adopted. Item 12.2 is to adopt the rates, charges, fees, and regulations that are not subject to Prop 218. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Director McIntosh, Director Patterson, second. Any comments on that?
Just real quick, yes, I voted no on 12.1 because I fundamentally disagree with the rate structure. I will be supporting 12.1, 12.2, 13, and 14, because I do believe we need to be making investments in infrastructure to protect water quality and source water for the future, and those fit into that area.
Okay. Any other comments? No. Okay, ready for a vote? All those in favor of adopting 12.2 as stated?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed, adopted unanimously. Agenda item 13, adoption of the 2021 budget as presented. A motion?
So
Director Patterson moved, Director Mellon seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No oppositions. And then finally, item 14, adopting the position resolution as presented. All those in favor? Oh, we need a motion, sorry.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Director Patterson.
Comment, if I may.
Yes.
This is extremely important because of the number of positions it adds and the way it helps us to become better at delivering the water. This is what will make the pay me now, pay me later, the later be a much lesser cost. Because we'll be doing more to be on top of it. So I'm very much in support of this. Again, this isn't driven by any union thing. This is driven by what is necessary to do what we are supposed to do, and that's deliver the water 24/7, 365 days a year, with an extra day in leap year.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, we have a vote on item 14. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, item 14 is adopted. That concludes our items on 218, or on rates and charges in the budget. We have a legislative report. Thank you all for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. You might hear something that would be of interest in this next item. Or not. It's about safe drinking water, just might be a report. Where's Andrew? Right there. Right behind you. So you have some news about the safe drinking water, safe and affordable drinking water fund, right?
Yes, I do.
Very related to the.
Are you?
Any of the commenters.
I'm going to wait a minute.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I have an update for you on the safe drinking water discussions at the Capitol. There is a memo at your places that we put together yesterday. There was an agreement reached Sunday between the governor and the pro tem and the speaker of the assembly on how to fund the access to safe drinking water. And the memo outlines what's in the agreement. I'll just run through it quickly. There are two components. The first component is what will be in the main budget bill, which is AB 74, and that is what they will vote on in time for the June 15th budget deadline. That takes care of funding for the FY 2019-2020 year. And what is in that is a total of $133.4 million. They are taking $100 million from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and that is part of the discretionary spending that the legislature decides on for that fund every year. They're taking $30 million from the state's general fund, and then another $3.4 million from the general fund for state water board admin costs. So that's for the next year. Then for the out year funding, there will be budget trailer bill language that is not yet in print, but the description of it from the budget documents is as follows. It would establish a framework for the Safe Drinking Water Program and the associated fund. It would provide for a 5% continuous appropriation from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund beginning in 2020/21. It would set an annual cap of $130 million for this fund. And beginning in the year 2023-24 and ending in 2030, there would be a general fund backstop. So if 5% of that GGRF money does not equal the $130 million, they would backstop it with general fund money.
So the water user fee is gone. The ag fee is
Gone.
Gone.
Right.
Okay. That sucks. Is there anything stopping us from supporting these bills?
Well, so
now?
here's the deal. We may have an opportunity on the trailer bill depending on timing. The budget bill, they'll vote on it this week, so we don't have the opportunity now. This came together very quickly. Just to give you a sense.
Yeah, everybody's surprised about the GGRF.
This was falling apart Thursday and Friday. So we started hearing noises of a deal on Friday, but they were very quiet about what it was, and then it came together Sunday night. So in terms of timing, we don't have time to get something on the agenda to support the main budget bill. The trailer bill, I just checked a moment ago, it's still not in print. We don't even know what the bill number is going to be. We're seeing a lot of other trailer bills coming through. The trailer bills are not subject to the June 15th deadline. So they very likely are going to vote on whatever's in print at the time they do the budget bill, and that's met that 72-hour time frame. And then they'll pick the other ones up in the coming weeks. We may see some trailing all the way out through the end of session, which is September 13th. This one, if I had to place a bet, I would think they would do this one sooner rather than later. But it may be in the next couple of weeks because, as I said, it's not in print yet. What we are doing, may I, one more thing, is
in an effort to provide some positive feedback, we've drafted a letter that would go to our delegation that basically says we're pleased that there's a budget agreement and applauding the governor, the speaker, the pro tem, the budget folks, Senator Monning, Assemblymember Garcia, and that we're delighted that an acceptable funding source has been found so that they can get moving on addressing this need.
As soon as there's a bill, I think we'd all be interested in seeing it come to us for action.
This report that you're making comes under determination and discussion. So I'm a little confused, and maybe council can help me, as to why we couldn't give some sort of support in a vote fashion, since it's determination and discussion.
Would you like me to start, and then Craig, you can, or do you want to?
You go right ahead. I don't think there's anything that would prevent you from expressing support for a bill that we have not yet seen. I don't know what Marlene's going to say, but certainly if this seems to be going in the direction you would like to see it go in, then I think you can express support.
My belief is, notwithstanding and having a bill number, to encourage the parties that are involved here to do this and get a number assigned is better than us just sitting on the sidelines.
I would say it'd be somewhat irregular to take a position on something we haven't seen.
I would like to see it.
Yeah. All right.
So, can I just throw in the kind of mechanical piece, and that is that it wasn't on the agenda, and we have to have it public noticed and on the agenda. And this didn't come together until Sunday night. So it's an issue of timing. That's why we've drafted this letter. And so when the trailer bill comes, hopefully we can get it to you before they print it and then put it out for a vote. So there's a hope there. And we can certainly explore other ways for the board to express support beyond the letter that we're planning to.
Well, so the letter has not gone out at this point. Can we also make sure the letter goes to the Clean Water Action, the Community Water Center, and Leadership Council?
Absolutely.
There is nothing to preclude, correct me, Craig or Alex, an individual board member who wants to express support for something to put it on EBMUD letterhead with their own name.
That's true.
As long as, I mean,
Can't be four of us, I think. I mean, I don't know.
well, that would be a Brown Act violation.
Right.
But individually, you could say, as a board member, I support this or not. But if it's not coming, I believe, can you not do that?
I believe you can express your own position as a board member to appropriate parties.
Okay.
So
I will plan on doing that. Just since we also agreed that if we were gonna communicate things to elected officials, that we would say so. So I will be planning to do that.
So you have the right to do that.
Yeah, but we said we would disclose it.
Yeah.
So. And then but as soon as something's in print, I want it on our agenda.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go from to wait 2 weeks for a ledge committee to a board meeting. If it's available for our next board meeting,
okay,
I want it before our full board.
But if it's not, I hope it would come to ledge.
Yeah, if there's time, ledge, but if it's up and ready by our next meeting, let's do it. Or, yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So just to quickly comment on the Safe Drinking Water Fund outcome, I do think it's amazing progress that there was a consensus reached on achieving it, although it may not be the ideal funding source. Oftentimes resolutions are arrived at, and it's the best option available for the parties at the time. So it seems like I'm glad that the EBMUD board president will be communicating about it. I was interested in another proposal that the governor had introduced specific to providing assistance to city sewer fees, and specifically to provide support for cities to be able to have relief for affordable housing projects. I'm wondering, did that ever remain in the budget, and is there a role for utility districts?
I have information. So it is, what was in the budget was a proposal for $500 million to go into the infill infrastructure grant program, which is an existing program that doesn't have any funds at the moment. And so all three, the governor, the assembly, and the Senate all agreed on the 500. Where the disagreement was it going to be a one-time 500 million, or was it going to be 500 million for each of 2 years? So it went to conference committee. The conference committee action is that it will be in a trailer bill, which I don't know if it's in print yet, but it would be a one-time 500 million. So the amount, at least for 1 year, was not disputed. So probably a trailer bill. It looks like it's survived, and we're not hearing any controversy on that.
As the program currently is established in law, do utility fees like ours qualify, or would that require engagement with the legislature?
My initial take in reading what's on their website, it looks like we probably are. I'm hedging it because it's a grant program that I'm not intimately familiar with. And I don't want to say definitely for sure and then find out we're not. But the way the application worked on the website was that the developers initiate the application and they can partner with the local government. The local government doesn't go in directly.
I would encourage seeking clarification for the final trailer bills if they're continuing past the June 15th deadline, just to make sure that if we could see an opportunity that we take it, but it does look like it's a very positive development for something that the board had commented on in a past budget workshop.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm butting up against a 4 o'clock meeting, so I can push it a little bit, but let's go on to the general manager's report.
So the monthly report is in your materials, and at your places there's the latest speaker bureau, and I can work to answer questions if you have any.
I would just ask one thing that's mentioned to Lisa. I really liked when we had 1 through 14 on the screen. Can we have, when we're dealing with an agenda item, have it up on the screen so we know? Because I was trying to go back 900 pages to page 2 of the agenda, and found
that would be helpful.
If it could just pop up when we're dealing with that agenda item.
I like that. Okay, reports and director comments. Finance and Administration Committee meetings are included in your packet. Director McIntosh, you have a short report from the Planning Committee?
No, we didn't have a vote on any item. We received a presentation on
microplastics
and
PFAS.
microplastics, and no vote was taken on it. It was information.
Alrighty. If you have items for future consideration, please provide them to the Secretary and General Manager. Any more director comments? Looks like not. Okay, we are adjourned. Our next meeting will be at 1:15 on Tuesday, June 25th, right here.